What if I told you that the next great leap in computation, the one that will dwarf everything we've achieved with silicon, isn't being forged in the sterile clean rooms of Intel or NVIDIA, but is quietly stirring to life inside a humble petri dish? What if the key to unlocking true artificial intelligence wasn't about writing better code, but about growing it? It sounds like the opening scene of a science fiction masterpiece, but this isn't fiction. This is the front line of science, and it begins with a ridiculously simple, yet profoundly earth-shattering challenge. Teaching a disembodied cluster of living brain cells how to play a 1970s video game. Imagine, for a moment, a landscape unlike any other. It's not a circuit board etched with impossibly precise lines of copper and gold. Instead, it's a living tapestry of 800,000 human neurons, harvested and carefully cultivated, spreading their tendrils across a microelectrode array. They pulse with a quiet, organic energy. They are, in a very real sense, a brain without a body. And its creators, at a visionary company called Cortical Labs, decided to give it a job. Its first task? To play a game of Pong? Now, this isn't just a quirky party trick. This is a gauntlet thrown down to the entire philosophy of modern computing. For 70 years, we've built our digital world on a foundation of silicon, a rigid, predictable, and binary material. Our machines think in ones and zeros, following instructions with perfect, unthinking obedience. But here, in this dish, was something fundamentally different. This wasn't a machine to be programmed. It was a living system to be taught. This experiment wasn't about testing the limits of code. It was about asking a question that borders on the divine. Can a sliver of life, divorced from any body or evolutionary purpose, learn to impose order on a digital world? The answer, as we're about to see, would not just be a simple yes. It would be a resounding, world-altering revelation that signals the beginning of a new technological frontier. One where the whispers of biology are starting to drown out the hum of the machine. So, how do you teach a smear of cells to play a video game? You can't write code for it. You can't give it a manual. The researchers at Cortical Labs had to think like biologists, not programmers. They had to create an environment where learning was the most logical path to survival, even for a brain in a dish that had nothing, really, to survive for. They connected the neural network to the game of Pong. The electrodes on the chip could both send signals into the network and read signals from it. The position of the Pong ball was translated into a pattern of electrical stimulation on one side of the dish. The neurons, in turn, would fire in response, and their collective electrical output would be interpreted to move the paddle up or down. Here's the genius of it. When the neurons successfully made the paddle hit the ball, the system would send back a predictable, orderly electrical pulse. It was a signal that said, "Good job. What you did worked. The world makes sense." But if the neurons missed the ball, the system would hit them with a blast of chaotic, unpredictable electrical noise, a form of sensory static. It was the equivalent of a sharp, unpleasant surprise, a message that said, "That didn't work. The world has just become random and stressful." This is a principle that life has used for billions of years, the free energy principle. All living things, from a single-celled amoeba to a human being, strive to minimize surprise and uncertainty. We seek predictable environments. The DishBrain, driven by this same fundamental impulse, began to change. Its neurons started to form new connections, to strengthen pathways that led to a successful hit, and weaken those that led to the chaotic noise. Within just 5 minutes, a time frame that would be laughably short for a traditional AI learning from scratch, started getting better. It wasn't just reacting. It was anticipating. It was learning. This wasn't programmed behavior. This was a genuine form of emergent intelligence, a mind however rudimentary organizing itself out of a desire for order. The DishBrain experiment wasn't just a success. It was a profound indictment of our current technological path. Let's talk about power. The human brain, the most complex object in the known universe, runs on just 20 watts of power. That's less than a dim light bulb. You can power your brain for a full day on the energy from a single candy bar. Meanwhile, a modern supercomputer, like the Frontier system at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, consumes over 21 megawatts. That's 21 million watts, enough to power a small town. And yet, for all that brute force, there are countless tasks your brain performs effortlessly that would bring that supercomputer to its knees. Why the staggering difference in efficiency? It comes down to architecture. Silicon computers are built on a fundamentally inefficient model conceived by John von Neumann in the 1940s. They have a processor, the CPU, and a memory bank, the RAM. To do anything, data has to be constantly shuttled back and forth between the two. This von Neumann bottleneck wastes an incredible amount of time and energy. The brain, however, is a masterpiece of integrated design. In the brain, the memory is the processor. The synapse that stores a piece of information is the very same structure that processes the next signal that comes through. Memory, processing, and adaptation aren't separate components in a box. They are a seamless, continuous, and dynamic flow. This biological model isn't just more efficient. It's also incredibly resilient. If a few transistors on a CPU fail, the entire chip is useless. If you lose thousands of neurons, your brain simply rewires itself, creating new pathways and adapting to the damage. This is the promise of biocomputing, not just to make our machines faster, but to make them smarter, more efficient, and more alive in their very design. Here's where we run into a fascinating intellectual wall. We are creatures of the digital age, trying to study a living, analog, and massively parallel network using our linear, binary, and sequential machines. The contrast is almost comical. It's like trying to describe a symphony by printing out a list of every single musical note in order. You have all the data, but you've completely missed the music. Our digital world is built on a cult of perfection. In computing, an error is a catastrophe. A single, misplaced bit can crash a program, corrupt a file, or send a rocket veering off course. We spend billions of dollars and countless hours trying to eliminate errors, to create systems that are perfectly predictable and flawless. But in biology, an error isn't a failure. It's data. A mistake is a learning opportunity. When a child touches a hot stove, the error of that action creates a powerful memory that reshapes their future behavior. The brain doesn't treat that pain signal as a bug to be patched. It incorporates it, learns from it, and becomes stronger because of it. Biology thrives on imperfection, on randomness, on the messy, unpredictable dance of life. This realization leads to a paradigm-shifting idea. What if the goal isn't for biology to replace silicon, or for silicon to perfectly simulate biology? What if the future lies in a union of the two? A hybrid system that combines the lightning-fast precision and reliability of our technological tools with the adaptive, creative, and error-embracing plasticity of a living neural network. Imagine a computer that doesn't crash when it encounters an unknown variable, but instead gets curious. A system that doesn't just follow instructions, but learns and evolves with every interaction. This is the new frontier, not man versus machine, but man and machine. And life itself all woven together. For over half a century, the tech industry has been powered by a single, relentless prophecy, Moore's Law. Coined by Intel co-founder Gordon Moore, it predicted that the number of transistors we could fit on a silicon chip would double roughly every 2 years. This law has been the engine of our modern world, giving us everything from smartphones to the internet. But that engine is now sputtering, and it's running up against the unyielding laws of physics. We have reached the atomic scale. The components on today's most advanced chips are so small sometimes, just a few atoms thick, that the bizarre rules of quantum mechanics have started to take over. Electrons, the lifeblood of our digital world, are beginning to misbehave. They engage in a spooky phenomenon called quantum tunneling, essentially teleporting through physical barriers they shouldn't be able to cross. This creates leakage, errors, and immense heat. We're trying to build a perfectly ordered city, but our bricks are starting to phase through each other. The demand for more computing power, however, isn't slowing down. AI, big data, and scientific modeling are hungrier than ever. We're standing at a precipice. The industry has hit a physical barrier. We can't keep shrinking. The next great leap forward in computing will not come from making silicon chips smaller. It must come from changing the paradigm entirely. It's no longer a race of It's a race for a new foundation, a new way of thinking about what a computer even is. And as the sun begins to set on the age of silicon, the biological dawn looks more and more like our only path forward. Returning to our little game of Pong, the experiment's true brilliance becomes clear in the shadow of Moore's law's demise. The DishBrain didn't just learn, it learned with a speed and efficiency that puts our best artificial intelligence to shame. A deep learning AI might need to play millions of simulated games of Pong, fed with a mountain of data, to achieve a similar level of proficiency. The DishBrain, on the other hand, showed significant improvement in mere minutes. Why? Because it wasn't running a simulation of learning, it was engaging in the real, physical act of it. When a biological neural network learns, it doesn't just update variables in a software matrix. It physically reconfigures itself. Dendrites grow, new synapses form, and existing connections are strengthened or pruned away. It's a living sculpture, constantly remodeling itself based on experience. Scientists have tried to mimic this with artificial materials, like conductive hydrogels that can change their state in response to electrical signals. And while these materials can imitate simple responses, they lack the crucial ingredients of life: variability, plasticity, and evolution. Every neuron in the DishBrain is slightly different. The network as a whole is a dynamic, ever-changing system. It can learn, forget, and relearn in complex ways that our rigid, artificial systems can't yet touch. This experiment confirmed a vital truth. There is a richness and a complexity to biological computation that we have yet to even begin to tap. It's not just a different way of processing information. It's a fundamentally superior way of learning and adapting to the world. For a long time, this kind of research was confined to high-tech university labs, a fascinating but seemingly distant prospect. But that is changing with astonishing speed. A new generation of startups, like the Swiss company Spark, are working to turn this incredible science into a tangible product. They are building the world's first biocomputing platforms. What they've created are neuroplatforms, arrays of living brain organoids, essentially mini-brains, cultivated in a lab, connected to a sophisticated electronic interface. And here's the truly mind-bending part. They are connecting these platforms to the cloud. Through what they call Neuro-as-a-Service, researchers, universities, or even corporations from anywhere in the world can log into a web portal, write code, and send tasks to be processed by these living neural networks in real time. Think about that for a second. This isn't hardware in the traditional sense. You can't hold it. It's not software. It's not just code. It's a completely new category of technology, living systems as a service. It's the ultimate fusion of biology and digital technology. You're not renting server space on a rack of silicon in Virginia. You're renting processing time on a cluster of living neurons in a lab in Switzerland. This isn't just an incremental improvement. It's a categorical leap. The birth of a new industry built not on silicon, but on life itself. We are commercializing cognition. As thrilling as this new frontier is, we must temper our excitement with a heavy dose of reality. Building a single, functional neural platform is a monumental achievement. Building thousands of them to meet industrial demand is a challenge of a completely different order. A silicon chip is predictable. Once designed, you can manufacture millions of identical copies that will all perform in exactly the same way. They require only electricity and cooling. But keeping living tissue alive is like running a microscopic, high-tech intensive care unit. These mini-brains need a constant, perfectly balanced supply of nutrients, oxygen, and growth factors. They need a stable temperature, the removal of waste products, and a sterile environment to prevent infection. It is an incredibly delicate and complex biological ballet. Furthermore, there is the problem of individuality. Unlike identical silicon chips, every single organoid is unique. Just like individual people, they grow differently, form different connections, and learn in slightly different ways. One organoid might learn a task quickly, while another might struggle. This inherent biological variability is a beautiful feature for research, but it's a potential nightmare for a corporate client who needs predictable, reliable, and standardized results every single time. The greatest obstacle for biocomputing isn't a technical one. It's a clash of cultures. It's the messy, unpredictable, and beautiful chaos of innovation running headfirst into the corporate world's insatiable demand for stability and scale. Even if a biocomputer powerful enough to replace a data center is still decades away. The impact of this technology is already being felt in a field where it matters most: medicine. For the first time in history, we have the ability to study uniquely human neurological diseases on actual human neural tissue, without having to experiment on a living person. Think of the possibilities. Researchers can now cultivate mini-brains using cells from patients with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. They can watch, in real time, and at a cellular level, as the disease progresses. They can observe how neurons misfire, how plaques form, and how communication breaks down. They can create models to study the patterns of memory loss and cognitive decline, not in a mouse or a computer simulation, but in a living network of human brain cells. And perhaps, most powerfully, they can use these organoids as perfect testbeds for new drugs. Before risking a clinical trial in humans, pharmaceutical companies can apply a potential new medication directly to the diseased organoid and see what happens. Does it slow the disease's progression? Does it restore normal neural function? Does it have toxic side effects? This could accelerate the pace of drug discovery by years, saving billions of dollars and, more importantly, countless lives. Even if biocomputing never powers our smartphones, its ability to give us a window into the living, ailing human brain is a medical revolution in its own right. And so, we arrive at the edge of the map, where the lines between science, technology, and philosophy dissolve into an unsettling fog. As we watch these neurons, in a dish, learn, organize, and solve problems, we are forced to confront an inevitable and deeply uncomfortable question. At what point does a complex biological reaction become something more? At what point does computation become cognition? And at what point does cognition flicker into the first, faint glimmers of consciousness? We are building systems that learn, that feel a version of stress, that seek order. Is it sentient? Of course not. Not in any way we would recognize. But where is the line? How many neurons does it take? What kind of connection, what pattern of firing, marks the boundary between a biological machine and a biological mind? Our own consciousness is an emergent property of 86 billion neurons firing in concert. What emerges from 800,000? Or 8 million? Or 80 million? We are blurring the line between the tool and the toolmaker, between the computer and the computed. This research opens a Pandora's box of ethical and political questions that our society is woefully unprepared to face. What rights does a lab-grown brain have? Is it ethical to punish it with chaotic noise to make it learn? If a biocomputer becomes complex enough to simulate human disease, could it also one day become complex enough to simulate human suffering? These are no longer questions for science fiction authors. They are becoming urgent questions for scientists, ethicists, and for all of us. We have embarked on a journey to redefine intelligence, and in doing so, we may be forced to redefine ourselves. The story of DishBrain is more than just a tale of incredible technology. It's a mirror reflecting our own nature. For decades, we've tried to build intelligent machines out of rigid, perfect, unfeeling silicon. We've treated errors as bugs and chaos as an enemy. But this humble dish of neurons teaches us the profound wisdom of biology, that true learning, true growth, and true intelligence are born from imperfection. They arise from adapting to the messy, unpredictable, and chaotic nature of reality. The lesson for our own lives is right there. We often treat our own minds like silicon computers. We fear mistakes, we avoid uncertainty, and we crave predictable, linear paths. But our brains aren't they are wetware. They are designed to learn from errors, to find opportunity in chaos, and to physically rewire themselves with every new experience. Perhaps the greatest gift of this new technology is the reminder to embrace our own biological nature, to see our mistakes not as failures, but as valuable data, to understand that growth isn't a straight line, but a messy, beautiful, and constant process of adaptation. This journey is just beginning, and it leaves us with questions that will shape the future of our species. What do you think defines the spark of consciousness? Are we playing God by creating these systems, or are we simply rediscovering a fundamental principle of intelligence that has existed in nature all along? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the boundaries of science, technology, and the human experience, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss where we're going next.